Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Spiritual Psychics TV and this show, Being Spiritual, with me, your host, Ashley Robinson. Good evening, folks. 9th of June already, and for us in the United Kingdom, in the south of the country in particular, it's been a beautiful day. The sun is shining, and I feel like one of those old solar panelled calculators today. I've sprung to life with the sun. And like a solar panel, I generally work well and better in the sun, and like the spiritual sunflower, we turn to face the sun. So I'm feeling energized, feeling excited to be with you tonight. Be wonderful to know where you're watching this live show from. Are you at home? Are you out with friends? Are you watching it on your phone? Where in the world are you watching the show from? If you are here for the first time, let us know where you're watching from. Terry Louise joins us on YouTube. Good evening to you, Terry. Nice, looks like a new profile picture there. Lighter hair, looking very good. And folks, if you've come back to watch it, thank you very much. Lovely Stacey Shaw, good evening to you. Looks like a new profile picture as well. This is a spiritualist philosophy show. We go live every couple of weeks. We do a dedicated spiritualist philosophy show once a month. Hiya, Millie Brown, good evening to you. And then in between, I do sort of snippets of spiritualism, spiritualist philosophy, truths of spiritualism, with readings in between. So tonight we're going to do more of a sort of a focus point on being spiritual. Lovely June Malkin, good evening to you. And I will be doing some readings as well throughout the show in the sort of the second and third chapters. So stay live. Leslie Moulton, good evening to you. And you can ask Ash anything. So anything spiritual, keep us on topic, folks. Really love getting listeners' sort of questions. You can put questions in at any point, but obviously if I've just said something in particular reference to that, throw in a question. Sarah Stouts on Facebook, good evening to you. And we're going to be talking a little bit about heaven and the concept of heaven, the afterlife, the spirit world, and in particular reception into heaven this evening. Nolan DeFree from a very cold South Africa. Well, good evening to you, Nolan. Thanks for joining us from a cold South Africa. Welcome today. Nice to have people in different continents. Joanne Hewitt from Basingstoke. Good evening to you. Paula Marie Manos, I hope I've correctly pronounced your name, Paula. Shared, would love a message from South Dakota, USA. Love the unicorn, the butterfly. Look at that. Some fantastic images. Yeah, we'll be doing some readings later. So get a good question in. Heavily Sprinkles, good evening to you. Claire, lovely Claire. And those that ask good questions will get some readings later today as well. Kerry Ann Marshall from Ontario, Canada. We got a few guests across the pond as well this evening. Lovely to have you here. Lovely Julie Caswell. Good evening to you. And there's another sunflower. Beautiful. It's becoming a sort of official logo of spiritual, I think, the sunflower. Kelly Kay would love a message from Skegness, Lincolnshire. Good evening to you. Yeah, Kelly. Hopefully we'll get round to doing some messages and stuff later. But I'll be looking for questions. So those people that ask me good questions, and my dad's watching live from my living room. Yeah, he's grandparenting this evening with my mum. It means my mum's gonna have to stay out later tonight, and I'll drop her home later. Yeah, they're looking after Noah and Oscar. Ethan, my son Ethan's actually at a dress rehearsal for a Holy Communion class he's doing with the Catholic side of the family tomorrow. And I hope I don't get into trouble because he had his first actual taste of communion in the Spiritualist Church a couple of months ago when we did Spirit School, and we run the Richard Bush Lyceum at Women of Spiritualist Church, I think 14th of May. Really wonderful opportunity to engage with young people within spiritualism as well. Little spirit school there. So Dad and Mum, thank you for watching that. I think Noah's having his dinner as well, watching the series as well. Noah's very excited by the fact I'm a YouTuber, and he was talking to producer Richard a couple of weeks ago. Richard said, you want to be a producer, then you can boss people like your dad around, tell them where to stand. He quite liked the idea of that. He's been talking about it for the last couple of weeks. Linda Wallace, good evening to you. Lovely to have so many people across Facebook and YouTube, and I'm trying to make as many names reference to tonight as I can. If I haven't specifically mentioned your name, Mo May from the seaside. Hello, Mo. We were chatting and catching up the other day. Lorraine Chambers, good evening to you. It's like sparkles around your profile picture. You've also got such lovely profile photos, folks, and that's my only real engagement with you. And your profile picture comes up, and I get bits of what you're saying. Millie Brown says, when your third eye opened up, what was your experience? Oh, good question to get us going, Millie there. I mean, I think naturally encouraged from birth. Really, I was brought up in spiritualism, Millie. So for me, it was just being encouraged to challenge where the communication was coming from, to test the intelligence behind the communication. I didn't formally start training until I was about 13, and that was then to close down, because it was all a bit overwhelming. And then at 18, sat in a development circle and practiced on opening up my third eye, if you like, my mind's eye, and doing more of that. And actually, it was like vivid memories. So we've all got the concept of thinking about a memory in our mind, but more vividly was what spirit were doing when my third eye, my mind's eye, was being opened up, and it was like a blank canvas, Millie, and they were throwing all sorts of images and visionary and other bits and pieces in there. And so some people talk about sitting in the power as well. And although we're still doing hellos, Millie, as you got in a good first question, I've just drawn a card for you there, which is fortune. Okay, and as I draw that card for you, you've got the man there, the person with the lantern. Actually, it's a lady in this card. Winding stairways. And I want to talk about the fact that you're heading in the right direction, Millie. Keep on keeping on. You're an upwards rising trajectory on that staircase. You can't necessarily see your finish line, but at the top of that staircase is your treasure trove. Okay, that's your fortune. And I feel that this in particular is about knowledge. It's about the knowledge you're seeking, Millie. So keep going in that direction. Use the lantern to extinguish darkness with light. Okay, I get the real sense that I'm talking about you as a light worker, you taking the light towards that darkness, you finding that knowledge being worth its waiting time. I want to talk about the last 5 months in particular, and you being on a bit of a journey, and I want to feel that that's almost like end of chapter for you, and there's this transition as you approach the sort of little Easter egg that comes out of that fortune. So yeah, great little first question there. Get us going, Millie. I'll do a couple more hellos, and then we're going to talk, a little bit tonight about heaven and that reception. For those of you that are joining the show for the first time, some sort of background to some of the things I'm going to talk about, and there's a little bit of a trigger here, folks, from a mental health perspective, and I'm going to talk about suicide very, very briefly. But my godson Robert, who was 21, died by suicide on the 4th of May, and young lad, 21 years old, and suffered, was mentally ill in terms of his health for several years from his sort of teenage years, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my new understanding of heaven and the reception that he has had, as well as about my understanding about that place I call heaven. Lily Rose says, cool, merging the Catholic and spiritualist as Jesus really was a master minimum. Absolutely, Lily. And I had the opportunity, I'm a civil servant, and I had the opportunity within the civil service recently to talk to colleagues about my faith and belief, and all of our staff support networks were there, and most people were really open-minded. I've always said your mind is like a parachute, or Malcolm Robinson used to say this, and I copy him now. But your mind works well like a parachute. Keep it open, and all sorts of wonderful things will happen. Good evening to you, Phil Shaw. And yeah, Jesus was a fantastic medium and healer. And actually, the Bible, despite being a collection of stories anywhere between sort of 1,500 to 2,000-3,000 years old, talks about mediums. I mean, at some points in the Bible, and there are lots of contradictions. It talks about mediums and prostitutes in the same category, but it also goes on to talk about that evidence of life after death. And one of the things I mentioned in my talk upset a few of my Christian colleagues when I said that I think Jesus, who was an incredible leader and teacher, actually came up with a cunning plan. Now, I'm obviously using 2023 plain English, but Jesus, Jesus, the leader, Jesus, the teacher, came up with this cunning plan where he was trying to help people back in those days understand the concept of energy. And I've always believed that God is the sum total of all the particles that make up energy in this universe, and that Jesus worked out in this cunning plan that people understood fatherhood, and he likened energy to a fatherly type figure. And I think that it's likely, that's my opinion, folks, I think it's likely, it's certainly a potential, that he was misquoted, years later in different bits of the Bible. But when he used to speak about his father, actually he was talking about this fatherly energy. And he realized that he could quickly contextualize that people could understand that relationship, and therefore he wasn't the son of God. We're all the children of God. I know there are bits of the Bible that then contradict that and say that's true, and other bits of the Bible that say that that's not true, and only Jesus was the son of God. We're not all the sons and daughters of God, but I think that God is everything. Kerry says there have been so many different interpretations of how heaven looks and feels. What is your take on heaven? Kerry, thanks for getting us back on track, and I'm going to read a little bit and I'm going to talk a little bit. And keep your questions coming in, folks, because I will take questions towards the end of my little talk. So if I didn't specifically name you folks, welcome. A beautiful, warm welcome to you. Producers told me there's a couple of questions coming. So I'm just going to talk for a little while, folks, and then I'm going to take some of your questions. And tonight I'm just going to read a little bit from Life in Spirit by Harry Edwards, a fantastic healer. My grandfather used to say that he thinks he was the best exemplar of the ability to work with that energy and give healing sort of since Jesus, an incredibly gifted person. And I take a lot of philosophy from Harry Edwards. I sort of grew up with him as a stable part of my spiritualist foundation. And he spoke so many beautiful truths. I'm just going to read a little bit from this book, and I'm going to talk about it, about my take, because for me, the difference between a human being and a corpse is the absence or presence of that personality. And our body as a vessel carries our personality right through to that change it goes through called death. And then afterwards, the personality, the soul, the spirit has a life after that change, a life after death. In that place I call heaven, the afterlife. And I'm going to read now from Harry Edwards. Not one of us knows what occurs when the time for our transition into the spirit life arrives, and indeed some folks say that life terminates with the last breath. A relative once told me, if it is as you say, then your belief will give you much happiness in contemplation of a further life after this one, and if not, what does it matter? It may be that this book could be a contribution to the survival point of view. When I had the thought of writing a book on life in spirit, I had no idea of what to write apart from some general ideas, and these were scanty. I had no plan in mind when I put a sheet of paper into my typewriter, typed out the title, then the word preface. And this is the one as printed in this book. Next, it was chapter 1, the thoughts flowed, so I typed them with the tip of my right hand index finger. The first time I typed was in the tent by the side of the Tigris at Baghdad 60 years ago. And this book, I think, was printed in the 1970s. 1976 was when Harry Edwards passed, so it may have even been 1960s, folks. Imagine him in Baghdad 60 years ago, so probably thinking maybe 90 to 100 years ago. Right. Harry Edwards goes on to say, I have not advanced any more since those days. My typing is still full of errors, and when I revise and check this page before asking my secretary to do it properly, it will look like a battlefield with crossings out and corrections. I did not prepare a list of chapters or subjects. When one chapter was finished, I asked myself, what is the next one? And going to the typewriter, the answers would come. So whether the contents of this book are purely my imagination arising from an active computer brain, or whether or not I am receiving subconscious mind, a flow of intuitive thought from another source, which is transmitted to my mind and brain to put the thoughts into letters or words, or whether it is a mixture of both, I do not know. I do know that when healing, and my consciousness is attuned to that source of healing, I receive intuitively directive thought concerned with diagnosis of the patient's complaint, often removed from the site of trouble. I also receive advice and directives to pass on to the patients, especially those unhappy people with upset minds. Indeed, my life's work could not have taken place where it was not for the faculty of attunement, in which my thoughts are received by the intelligence in tune with me, and it flows that my mind is likewise able to receive through directives. So, whether the thoughts I've already expressed and those still to come are literally spirit true, or the proceeds of imagination, or both, who can say? Suffice it that the possibility exists that there may be, to some degree, still give a picture of life in the spirit dimension, or at least a partial glimpse of what our future heritage is to be. At least, I hope that this book will provide food for some discussion and reading, even if it's derisory and amusing to the deep sagacity of experienced, skeptical, superior mind. As members of my human family are all so different, and in some respects, fundamentally, it is unreasonable to expect that we all arrive as a company in a great carniversary to house all souls, or that the Aborigine would find his place among the settlement of nuclear physics or Eskimos. And I should say, folks, for those that don't know me well, I have dyslexia. And occasionally you hear me pronouncing words and thinking, what on earth was that word? And the likelihood is I just didn't pronounce it correctly. I do try and spell them phonetically, so at least you get an idea of where I'm going. Harry Edwards goes on to say, it is a natural experience to expect with, say, the average reader of this book, that his or her entry into the spirit life would follow on much the same lines as happened with, he's talking about Harry Edward's friend, John. On arrival, the newcomer would be met by his or her dear ones, who would have advanced knowledge of the friend or relative's transition. A common experience is worth recalling, which occurs when a person is near to the point of physical death. This is when the sick one becomes conscious of the presence of members of the family who have already made that change. The sick one converses with them, to whom they seem more real than the living ones around the patient. It is likely in this case, and cases like these, the physical body still retains a degree of life, but the patient's spirit self is leaving or has already started to leave the body. So, in the more general and ordinary way, a newcomer is received by those who care for him, and they have the responsibility of taking care and giving the happy introduction into a more real and lasting existence. It is logical to conclude that when that time comes for the change to be made, the departing person goes over as he is. He does not suddenly become an angel, full of grace and possessing infinite wisdom. He will know no more than he previously did. He will possess his personality, likes and dislikes, the memory of his past experiences, loves and ambitions. It will be just him, self, except that he's left behind his loved ones, his house, his bank account, his car. His greatest treasures will be those acts of goodness and kindness his conscience asked him to render. On the reverse side will be his knowledge of the harm and hurt he has willfully committed, for which he will need to be cleansed, and he will need to cleanse his consciousness through retribution. If it is true that the eternal fight of good against evil goes on and on, it follows that, as he leans on the side of God and goodness, it is reasonable to anticipate that the preparations are made to meet all eventualities and to cope with whatever problems we present to the spirit people with. It is easy to see that when an elderly person who has suffered much from a lingering disease and whose outlook has become dulled and weak will need to be received into the arms of loving kindness, placed within the quietness of rest, helping the mind to slowly accept the new order of things, to help him become consciousness of a new strength, to stand and move about, to communicate with those who are looking after him, probably a loved one whom he knows, and so gently became restored in the strength of body and outlook, enabling him to appreciate, if slowly, the virtues of spirit life. In our time, this may take a while, but in spirit life, it can take all time or no time, where clocks do not exist, nor where there is light and darkness, nor seasons of the year. There are those in our life possessing abundant health who by accident, an air crash, motor car collision, or any form of violent death find themselves suddenly transported from this life to the next. One can have the mental picture of ensuring complications, but some general conclusions can be established. It may well be through the nature of the passing of violence. This need not be a painful memory, for the mind has had little time to comprehend it, but there would be the shock of leaving so much behind. Particularly so when a husband, for example, is cut from his wife and children, or in a more materialistic way, business associations with responsibilities to other people. A lady from her pets that meant so much to her, a man whose life was bound up in fulfilling an ambition of working for a cause. Each entrant would need to have compassionate, patient, and understanding treatment according to their special needs. Some could be in shock through their unhappiness and grief in leaving behind all that is dear to them. That would need to be taken and rested, given sleep, and so led to a gentle realization of what happened. They would be given news about their dear ones, and as a sense of perspective came, they might well engage in some form of service and preparation for the time of reunion. More tragic could be those who are driven to suicide. There would not be damned to all eternity, as some religions would have us believe. They would be treated with special loving care, knowing how mentally ill their tortured minds had suffered from troubles that were so real to them, so fearful that in panic they ended their earthly lives by their own hand. Just as a normal person possesses his character and memory of the passing, so it may be the unfortunate one of coming into the new life could still have the fears and reasons for the upset, possibly deep grief. A feeling mind would be able to create a picture of treatment the spirit doctors and nurses would give to them, the kind, soothing voice, the giving of love to wipe away the effects of cruelties and indignities, the giving of flowers, granting sleep, restoring strength of personality and confidence, rebuilding their perspective, and providing them with a new avenue of service, possibly nursing or some other form of rendering help. There are, of course, many more types of special needs, for example, those who were insane, and taking into account the different forms of insanity, obsession, remorse, religious fervor, alcoholics, people dependent on drugs, the essentially hard materialistic mind, the messer, the hypodermic, down to the person whose character is evil, the sadist, the destroyer, the merciless. In spirit life, all have the right of free will to go which way they wish, and no doubt with those evil minds they would not be content to remain where love and goodness reigns, and so they will go their own way. There are, however, other factors which have a direct bearing on how entries are made within the spirit realm. Now, I'm going to pause there, folks. And if people have enjoyed that, I can read a little bit more tonight, but I can certainly read more another time. I wanted to pause there because I know that questions are coming in. And I just wanted to add a little bit more context because I was speaking about my godson, Robert. And I've read this book and I've had that understanding. And I think that Harry Edwards does a beautiful job of describing heaven at that reception. But I now have evidence of my godson Robert's life after the change that he went through after he died by suicide. And he has now communicated with several people to describe some of that transition. Now, I will be conducting Robert's funeral this time next Friday. And Rob and I, while he had his earthly life, had lots of conversations about spiritualism, about religion, about God. And ultimately, it's fair to say that Rob didn't really believe in anything. On a good day, Rob believed in something greater than himself, and he believed in energy. And we would come to the sort of conclusion that if my belief in energy was a descriptor for God, then we could at least agree that energy existed, and therefore the universe being part of something. Now, Robert's funeral will be a funeral without God in the sense that I won't make references to God, but that divine presence and love will be throughout. His mum and dad, both very spiritual lives in different paths, and we would do a great celebration of his life. Since passing, Rob has come back and say almost totally unchanged from a personality. I believe that one of the first things he did in the spirit world was go through the experience of smoking marijuana, something that he enjoyed recreationally, despite advice not to do so. And I've also had that smell physically produced in our church, in our sanctuary, not just once, but several times, and other people have picked up on it. Now, someone could be having a cheeky spliff or something, I suppose, in our sanctuary at the church, but there's been no physical evidence of that, only spirit evidence. I also know from that place I call the waiting room, where my communicators come through to give me evidence of mediumship to pass on to the loved ones, that Rob has been in that waiting room, flirting and chatting up other people in the waiting room of similar age. I've also had evidence from communicators that I've passed on to otherwise strangers where they've spoke about he's still got a lot to learn and we're helping him. And that ultimately he finally has that psychological help. He's got spirit doctors and nurses and counselors and therapists around him 24/7. And he's finally out of that pain. And one of the first places he went to when his physical life ended was that place of peace, where he no longer felt any physical pain. Psychologically, he's going to spend some time in the spirit world getting over the pain that he was feeling, the experiences that he was happening. But I think the way that Harry Edwards describes that, and it goes back to a phrase I've used many times on this show, is that heaven is everything we need it to be. Heaven is everything we want it to be. And it can continually transition. But we know that we are met by friends and family. And even at times of tragedy, where it's not necessarily part of pre-planned destiny, the spirit world are there immediately to meet us. And I had confirmation that Rob's grandparents did exactly that. His granddad, and then his nan, who he was very fond of, and then my grandfather, who had some choice words in French, not real French, but Cockney French, I think you get my gist, about having him up here and that receiving him, looking after him. And I think that's that beautiful thing for me. The final bit I wanted to finish on before sort of taking more questions is that concept of evil. And a couple of weeks ago, I spoke about my 5-year-old boy, Noah, who's, as I say, been brought up Catholic and spiritualist. And when he came to spirit school at the Richard Bush Lyceum, we were talking about God. We were talking about heaven. We were talking about that every soul has the opportunity to progress in the spirit world. And he immediately went to the concept that in heaven, there must therefore be a hell. But he said to me, Dad, and he got hold of the microphone at our church with him, and he said, Dad, it's not an actual place because it's all one world, the afterlife. And he said, the easiest way to think about it is that we're all up there. And I think when he talks about up there, he's thinking about a higher vibrational frequency. He said, up in the clouds. And he says, we're all in heaven. But he said, but evil people, they end up in a police station. And it's looked after by the angels. And really bad, evil people, they end up being in a prison, in a jail cell of their own making. And they stay there until they learn how to behave and they're good. And it's only when they leave they realize that they were the ones that put themselves in there at a higher level. They were judging themselves, and the angels were just making sure that they weren't going to upset or be mean or horrible to anyone else. And I love that at 5 years old, in plain English, his sort of interpretation of it. And I think what Harry Edwards was saying in his philosophy there is that we all end up in the afterlife. There is only one spirit world, and we all end up there. And actually, if you pass over and you are exactly the same type of person, then you're not going to necessarily socialize with everyone else. You'll still be received and welcomed. And perhaps those people that believe they're going to go to hell find themselves in a hell of their own making. But they're there in that place I call heaven. And there they are. They have the opportunity to progress. But we also talk about the fact that we have our own free will and accord. We have personal responsibility for the free will, and for all the good and all the bad we do in that earthly experience, there is retribution. Some people talk about that concept of karma. And I believe that in heaven, we have the opportunity to weigh that up. Some people talk about the scales of justice, don't they, at the gates, about meeting people perhaps like St. Paul. But I think that ultimately we do that with our friends and family. And if we want to progress, and if we want to make up for the bad we've done, then we have that opportunity to progress, because everyone has the opportunity to progress within those spirit realms. And now I've been talking about heaven as one place, and I've just used the word there, spirit realms. So I think you'll very rarely hear me quote from the Bible, but there's an element of the Bible my dad often mentions about heaven almost being a mansion with many houses, or a house within many mansions. And I say Jesus had this cunning plan of liking the spirit divine energy presence of God to an energy. And he spoke therefore about his Father's place. And I think he was talking about that place that the universe have to go. So there are, I believe, many dimensions or realms within the spirit world, and that ultimately you can't continue to progress. And if in earthly terms we think an upwards rising trajectory, you can't progress as an evil, dark sort of person. You have to be able to make up for some of that negativity, that negative energy, or that darkness of that evil. But you can progress. And then that way it stops, the darkest souls and energy from progressing up. So, folks, that was sort of what I wanted to talk about today. And you can ask me absolutely any questions about any of it. If you want me to read more from Harry Edwards' sort of life in the spirit world, and in particular that reception into heaven, I could read that. We're about halfway through a chapter, so I could always read some more. Let me know in your chat. But I also know we've got some questions. So I'm going to take some water and we're going to ask some questions. The first one, I think, is from Rachel Jarrett. Rachel Jarrett, thank you for your question. You ask about your aunt who passed away recently. How do we know they got there safely and met up with their hubby? So without directly linking with your aunt, I know beyond all reasonable doubts that everyone has a life after that change we call death. So I know they've made it there. And I believe that she had wanted to meet her husband. She absolutely would have. And no doubt he would have been there to meet her. Now, in terms of that individual proof for you, you may be lucky that you have a communicator from heaven that tells you we've got her, that she's safe. She's met up with her hubby. And in fact, what I'm going to do, just by way of experiment, Rachel, I've just drawn a card for you here, which is the moon card. And we've got that Cancer sign there. We've got the crab looking up towards the moon. And I've got the letter J. Okay, so I know your family name is Jarrett, but I've got another symbolic J for you, Rachel. And I've got a woman that's working with me now, this woman is claiming to be family. She's talking about being a sibling, and she's talking about being a mum's side of the family. Okay, so I've got a sibling, I've got a woman. This would be a sister of mum, and I know that you've told me aunt, but I've got a lady here claiming to be a sister of your mum in the spirit world. She's also given the letter F. Okay, she's talking about being in heaven with a partner. Okay, a brother-in-law to your mum. This would be your mum's brother-in-law, an uncle, and she gives me the letter F for Foxtrot, Fred. She's also talking about an anniversary of February, and I'm not too far after Valentine's Day. I've got Valentine's Day a few days later, and I can also see the number 7. I don't know if it's 17 they're trying to show me. That would be also be significant with this communicator, Rachel. And they're telling me that we're here, she's here. So I've given you evidence of your mum's sister, or lady claiming to be your mum's sister, being with her husband in the spirit world. If this is the lady you're talking about, she's also using that third person as saying she's here, but she's also talking about her being there as well. So you would understand both of them. And as the crab meets in the moonlight, I want to talk about that concept that although I've said you might have had that evidence from me, but you might have that evidence from a medium, that you will find that within your mind's eye, that she is trying to influence you. Daffodils, I'm talking about some daffodils out on the lawn where you can see from where you washed up this evening, Rachel. There was something, a glass of water or something like that. There was a tap, there was some water. Beyond that was some grass, a daffodil. She's talking about the daffodils being around you today. Okay, Rachel. So hopefully that's answered the question, and hopefully, Rachel, you've understood your message. So I'm going to take a couple more questions now, folks. Diane says, are there different levels in heavenly earth? Are someone passes? I believe so, Diane. As I sort of learned from different philosophers, and I asked my own sort of guide team for evidence, the way it was described to me was indeed levels. I read within spiritual books and heard from teachers about dimensions. And one of the sort of the more sort of common themes is that if Earth exists in the 3D, the third dimensional world, then actually it is actually the third dimension. There are 2 levels below that, sort of darkness, slower energy, and then there are higher levels. And that lots of spiritual and spiritualists talk about communicators and the level of attunement which Harry Edwards was influencing coming in at the 4th dimension, which some people describe as like a limbo. I think about it as a meeting area or my waiting room, and that people then therefore talk about heaven as a sort of fifth dimension. So you go from this earthly life in the 3rd dimension in through limbo in the 4th dimension, which is where you come back to communicate in this 5th dimension, being sort of human. People talk about, I've heard up to sort of 12 levels. People talk about their guides being from particular levels and the levels meaning something, as if there's an element of accreditation and you can get higher and higher, and your guide comes in and they're a 12th dimension guide, which means they're even more enlightened. But as I said, everyone has the opportunity to progress. And I think that labels are still very human mind. You know, we create religion, even though the spirit world say there is no need to live your life in a particular way. There is no need to create religion in order to do that. And I think that dimensions and levels are our earthly human way of trying to fathom out what we think about energy and different vibrations of energy. And I think we think about them higher because they're perhaps more enlightened and working certainly within the light. But again, I think people can travel between them. And I think that if you talk about that concept of ascended masters and teachers and people that have lived lots of life, maybe hundreds of thousands of times they've incarnated as human beings and they're progressing through those dimensions, then the only way to progress upwards is by getting rid of negative karma. And that actually, after one earthly experience, you're likely to have inherited quite a bit of negativity, and you might not progress much further than that sort of 4th and then fifth dimension. But I talk about the afterlife, the life after this life, and us all being there. So I know I've probably contradicted myself slightly, Diane, but the answer is yes. I do think there are different levels and dimensions in the heavenly earth after someone passes, although I do think of it as a life after life, and we all have the opportunity to there, and we can dip in between. And Diane, the card I've just drawn for you is the tree. Okay, and this tree card here, if we think about this card. We think about the tree of life, but look at those roots, and we can invert this card as well. And it looks very similar. It still looks like a tree. We think about the placenta of a baby and new life. We talk about knowledge. We talk about wisdom. We talk about tapping that up. We talk about the various levels within the spirit world. Some people make reference to the records, the school or halls of learning, the Acacia sort of records, and the opportunities to do so. And I want to invert this card so that the roots are at the top. And I want to talk about the fact that you are working very well attunement, tapping into ascended knowledge. So knowledge which is not necessarily from this life and experience time, that you would be aware of that through your own attunement, and this being sort of encouragement for you that you need to continue to do so. I feel there's a special relationship between a mother and daughter, and that's why I kept talking reference to the card. I was inverting it, I was looking about the placenta, I was looking about the womb, and I was thinking about the baby in the womb. This very, very strong relationship. So, Diane, that was your card, and hopefully I've answered your question. It's okay. Going to take another couple of questions, folks. And I say, yeah, if you've heard something that I've said, I want to ask a question about that. If you want more from the book, let us know, folks. Hopefully you're enjoying the show. You know, we've been going for about 35 minutes now. So how's it all going? Are you enjoying yourself, folks? Are you chatting about what you've had for dinner? Or are you chatting about, you know, being spiritual? Nolene says, how do we kickstart, activate our intuition or connect with our higher self? Nolene, it starts exactly like asking questions like that. Just being aware of there being something greater than you and yourself is a huge start. I also believe that we all have at least one principal guide that is with us for our entire earthly life. And I feel it's about developing a relationship with them. And I think a lot of that can start through taking moments, even if it's a minute, for wellness and meditation. And then through meditation, being able to go to a meeting circle and meet with your guide. And once you're able to go through the concept of either clearing your mind with a blank canvas, sometimes I see it as a mirror in my mind where vivid imagery can be activated. That is all about you doing this stuff. So, you know, I talk about opening up and closing up. I go through the motions. Some people talk about working through their chakras and the chakra energy. There are, you know, 5 or 6 main ones that people often formally teach. But just being aware that you can open and close your chakras, you can slow them down. Your life force energy can come in through, you know, through your head and your executive functions around the front. Breastfeeding mums often have chakras and life force transmitted through sort of the nipple area and breast milk and things like that. And just being aware of your chakras, being aware of the opportunity to tap into the universe, to feel grounded, connecting with you know, with Mother Earth, you know, getting your shoes off, feeling the ground, finding that time and space for wellness and meditation. That's really important. And then when you're ready, you want to do it more formally, find yourself a spiritual circle leader. Go on to SPTV UK, folks. There's a directory there. Connect yourself with your local spiritualist church or centre. Find an open circle that you can just turn up to, or an open platform. Find out a bit more about what's going out, and ultimately then try and join a closed circle where you can start to invest in you and develop. Sometimes you get workshops. For those of you in South London at Hatbridge Church, we've got one over about 3 hours where Ivan Lee is taking students through, you know, a bit of an introduction to that. On Thursday nights at Wimbledon Spiritualist Church, we're about to restart our open platform with Mr. Phil Shaw, budding mediums as well as working mediums coming there and sort of continuing to develop. It's all about investing in ourselves. Continued professional development, Nolene, and there are some good online courses that can give you more education. There's some really good meditations on SPTV UK. Reverend Leslie Moulton, that was on a little while ago, she does a guided meditation which you can connect with on YouTube. All of the stuff that's been on SPTV, you can find that in the archives. Thank you very much. And a quick card for you is Never. Okay, and I've got the Black Crow there. I'll just give you that card. And I want to say never say never. I feel like there's been an element of finality. I see this T junction that you were approached, and you got to the point of saying, right, we can't go any further, Nolan, but never say never, and actually recognize the fact that this is a cul-de-sac. It wasn't the end of experience, end of chapter. Actually, you can go back. You can retrack your footsteps, and actually there are opportunities to go back and to redo. And this is about an earthly experience, something that you carry some regret of things that weren't done, I was being told. Thank you, Nolene. That was for you. Okay, I'll take my next question. Good questions, folks. Lovely, really good questions. And so hopefully I've answered them. And for those who got the mediumship, that makes sense. You do give us some verification that that all made sense to you. Tony Wright, do we have the choice to stay or return? Tony Wright, absolutely. I believe we do. I do believe in the concept of reincarnation, that you can incarnate once, have this earthly experience, and then decide to do it again. But I do think it's a personal choice in the spirit world. I think you don't have to make a choice to incarnate as a human being for the first, in the first basis. You can exist as a spirit being. You could also exist as a spirit being that is intending to incarnate, and then something goes wrong with the pregnancy, and you continue to develop in the spirit world, and you can develop there, and you can go through a spiritual body and sort of develop in that way. But yes, I think some people not only can do it more than once, they can do it hundreds of thousands of times. But I think that we have the choice if we're going to do it again. And so, say some people might do it hundreds of thousands of times. Some people just do it the once. That was enough. So yeah, good question, Tony. And I'm just going to give you this peace card here. Got this beautiful stained glass window there inside this chapel, and I want to say that as we turn and see that beautiful light coming through the stained glass, I want you to really take the opportunity to see all of the different shades. Okay, now in that beautiful coloured stained glass, I want to talk about grey in particular. We're not talking about 50 Shades of Grey. It's not that kind of after night show. We're going to talk about, though, the various shades of grey, everything that exists between black and white in those shades of grey, Tony. I feel that's really important that you find some peace with that. I want to say that the serenity prayer is really important to you. I want to give you the courage to deal with the situation you're dealing with right now. And I believe there's an element of you having to react to a situation, but that you having the opportunity to know the difference between the things that you have to react to and the things that you can live through or change. And that would be quite important to you, Tony, at the moment. Thank you very much. Good question. Thanks so much. Resonates. Love the positivity the card brings through. Thank you, Noeline. Very much appreciated. So Michaela Hannah, good evening to you. Great question. Do you believe heaven is the waiting room to reborn again? I think it is a realm. It is an arena. I think that the waiting room I talk about in mediumship is something I've created. I don't know how many children of the 80s we've got on. If you remember a show, Quantum Leap, I know they've just rebooted one in America and across the pond. But in Quantum Leap, Dr. Sam Becker had stepped into the Quantum Leap accelerator and vanished. But he used to go through and try and create better situations, where put right where once had gone wrong. And in the waiting room in this sort of science experiment were the personalities, the spirit energy of the people whose life that he was then incarnating, throughout sort of time. That waiting room from Quantum Leap is the waiting room I imagine in my own head of where the communicators come forward. My guide team are there. They're checking credentials, no ID, no entry. Who are you? How do you know the person you're going to communicate? They're getting everything ready for me. Heaven, I think, is a place that you start before you incarnate as a human being. A couple of weeks ago, I read a poem from lovely Shirley Monaco from Women of Spiritualist Church when she spoke about my three children saying goodbye to each other in the spirit world as Ethan joined, and then Noah, and then Oscar afterwards, and Oscar waiting in heaven to be reborn into this sort of life and their element of choosing a family. And I absolutely love that concept. I think that once you're in heaven, and that's a word that I use, it's a label I use, you can choose to incarnate. Often from the evidence I've had from my guide team is that people wait 2 or 3 generations of their family experiences to catch up with them in heaven before doing it again. I have heard situations where people incarnate immediately. When I was in China, they speak about the emperor, immediately incarnating into the next body. Whether or not that is a belief or that is something that actually happened, I think it's all absolutely possible. I think the Dalai Lama also, they look to the second that babies are born versus conception, which is quite interesting because I've always thought that the spirit self starts to enter the body at the point of conception. Some people talk about the fact that it needs more of a physical body about 6 months into a pregnancy, but in ancient sort of China sort of regulations, they talk about it being at the point of birth that the spirit could reincarnate. So good question. Hopefully I've answered that for you. I'm going to draw a card for you, which is skills. Lovely card here. You've got the crossbow, you've got the arrows. I want to talk about an extra feather in your cap, and it's being linked to the skills. Okay, so when we talk about having an extra feather in your cap, if one of those arrows from the crossbow were to lose its feather, it becomes useless in the battle, in the defense, or the offense. Having an extra feather in your cap meant you could keep that arrow going. And I want to talk about your resilience. I want to talk about your super resilience, Michaela, and the fact that you've been well tested and challenged, and you arrive with this sense of resilience being an important part of what you're going through. You've got this extra feather in your cap. Hay fever's making it challenging today. Yeah. So hopefully that makes sense for you, Michaela, both the card and the answer to your question. Do you cross over if you take your own life? Robin asks. Yes, absolutely. I believe you do. Now, if you lived a life with a belief that by taking your own life, you don't end up in heaven, then for a while you might believe that you've just died. And, you know, some people talk about it being a limbo or that fourth dimension, but ultimately you do end up in the afterlife. Every living being has the opportunity to progress there. So yeah, every living being, consciousness, you know, that spirit energy, that personality continues, personality unchanged. And if you make the decision to take your own life, if you die by suicide, then you end up in exactly the same place. But psychologically, there's almost always something going on in your mind, and you need some help to overcome that. And although you have no physical pain, you are dealing with the shock of suddenly arriving back in the spirit world. And like I was talking about my godson there, Robin, you get that support. Heaven is everything you need it to be. And the card that I've drawn for you is the Inquirer card. Beautiful card here. Think about it sort of being quite Celtic there, with the crosses and the various greens, the limes. We've got the real sort of like grassy green, nature, the woodlands. We've got the lime green. We've got the very light green and almost like the neon green with the sort of the red of the angel. And I want to talk about you continuing to ask the right questions. So I know you've just asked me a question there, Robbo, but actually you have this ability to actively listen, and that your questions, your open questions in particular, giving someone in your life a real opportunity to open up. The moment there is a younger lady in your life at the moment that is particularly responsive to this, I want to talk about the fact that your listening is a real super strength, Robin, that you are actively listening, you are paraphrasing, you are summarizing, you are emphasizing with them, you're doing really good listening, and that actually this is really important to this person. I don't know if you understand the letter S being quite significant. I've got a man here that's just communicating, Robin, with me. They're telling me they know you. They're telling me that they're family. They're telling me that they've passed with a heart-related condition. They were a father. They were a brother, an uncle, and a grandfather. And they were talking, just giving me they were the ones that were giving me this information and helping me to influence that card for you. So you'd understand that communicator as well. September was an important anniversary between this and that person, and this young lady that's in your life right now. You'd understand that. I've got the letter S for Sierra, Sally, Shelley. I've got that sounding name. So hopefully, Robin, that's answered your question and that makes sense for you. Take another couple of questions. Producer said some brilliant questions. Probably not going to be able to take them all tonight, folks. Going to get as many as we can. So Richard is doing his best to find us probably some good ones, some challenging ones for me. Tammy Lee Hart. How do we know if our loved ones are happy and not lost and confused? Good question. I mean, if we're talking about someone specifically, I suppose that you only really know when they give you evidence that they are happy and that they're not lost and sort of confused. I believe that everyone will eventually be, satisfied and then happy, and they will find sort of peace and home and therefore not confused. I think that some people went there with such a bump and a shock, they may be very unhappy. I think that some people, like my godson, told me he was not happy once he got there. It was not what he thought it was going to be. He thought it was going to be an absolute end, and actually he had this life after life, and he wasn't happy about that. But he's now in no rush to be there because it's everything he needs it to be, and therefore he's satisfied that that was the end of the experience in that life. I think he's unhappy with some of the decisions he made in the run up to that period. Still a bit lost, still a bit confused. He's got support. He's got his granddad with him and his nan, other people that have died in similar circumstances helping him. He's got spirit doctors working with him. And ultimately, Tammy, we need to look for that evidence within them. We can ask our guides, we can ask our guide team, we can ask our communicators, we can ask them to give us a sign. And as you asked this question, I've got a woman that's linking with me. Tammy, this woman's claiming to be a mother, a grandmother. She's talking about being a sister. I've got the letter K with her. There's a K for Kelly, but kicking K, kilo. I've got that letter is quite important. April, and around the end of April, I'm in the 20s, and from at 21 or 21 is otherwise significant. And they're talking about being happy and being in the spirit world. They're giving the letter C over their heart, and I think they've had a cancerous type condition, an illness or infection of some sort, which has led to the end of their life. And then talking about the fact that they went to a cottage by the sea to rest and recuperate, to sleep, and to finally rest without pain. And that feeling of lost was met immediately by a loved one, holding their hand and taking them through that transition. So Tammy, hopefully that answers your question. You've understood your communicator too. Okay, got some more questions coming in now. Stacey. How can I help my 4-year-old keep her ability to ready pictures so it doesn't fade away as she gets older? Great question, Stacey. And I'll answer as a spiritualist celebrant, trainee minister. I'll answer as a medium. I'll answer as a dad. Okay. So ultimately, certainly in this country, we talk about a personal responsibility and a discipline that comes with sort of formal training. And in most circles, you would say that actually you shouldn't really look to formally develop as a medium until you're an adult, sort of age of about 18. Now, everyone kind of matures at different sort of stages. And I said I grew up in spiritualism when my parents sort of gently encouraged me to challenge who the communicator was and the intelligence. So rather than thinking that it could have been a mental health situation of psychosis where I was imagining things that weren't there, actually there was an opportunity to say, well, who are they? I remember seeing a Roman soldier, and the Roman soldier was a guardian of Wimbledon Spiritualist Church, and it's about evidencing where that image was coming from. Was it a vivid image in my mind, or was it something I was physically seeing? Now, I'm doing Spirit School at Wimbledon Spiritualist Church at the moment. We're going through the principles of being a spiritualist at Wimbledon Spiritualist Church. We talk about the concept. Most spiritualist organisations have these principles, bylaws, concept of what it is that sums up their sort of membership. And I'm describing that in plain English. My 1-year-old, who's probably taking it in a less verbal way, but my 5-year-old certainly, and my 8-year-old. And it's all about contextualizing. It's all about talking in plain English. It's talking about, like we are now, that we believe in a life after death, and we believe in a place we call it heaven, or whatever you want to call it, and that our friends and family, our loved ones go there, that heaven's a sort of a good place. And that actually, by doing that sort of gentle and telling them about that sort of stuff, it's not encouraging them to suddenly develop as a medium and start giving the evidence across, but it makes it less scary, makes it less overwhelming. And then ultimately, if it gets to a point that it starts to become overwhelming, it's learning how they can sort of shut it down. So just sort of gently encourage their growth and development as a person, as a human being, teach them all those amazing things, Stacey, that no doubt you're doing, unconditional love and service to one another. And therefore, as they get older, they'll be able to switch this on and off as much as they like. I think we all have the ability to be able to work with the gifts of mediumship and healing, and that we can all tease that out with practice and with development. And if it's appropriate, there's nothing to stop you from taking children to spiritualist churches at services. I would say always check with the minister, sort of celebrant leader of that church, that they're happy to do so. We always say at Wimbledon Hatbridge Spiritualist Church that as long as the child is accompanied by a well-behaved adult, they can absolutely come in. We also say within our church that mediums shouldn't go and give messages to children. They should, if they have a communicator, they should do it through the parent or guardian. So I think it's about just understanding what rules, regulations, standard operating procedures that you're happy with, that you're comfortable with, and then finding a local centre or church that can help you with that. I'm hoping that lyceums, the old sort of spiritualist word for Sunday school, are coming back. We're going to be running our second one in August, I think, in Wimbledon, and I'm looking to sort of keep doing it, really. And I know that there are churches and centres up and down the country that are inviting young people to come in and practice their religion as a way of life. And I think if you've got the opportunities to do that, you'll be very welcome. One of the things that we do at Wimbledon is we broadcast our divine service every other Sunday on SPTV. And the other thing we occasionally do is we'll go out and broadcast live to Facebook and YouTube via like a Zoom channel. We haven't done that for Spirit School yet, because I'm still sort of sorting out all the safeguarding issues, because we've got young people involved. But we've written quite significant safeguarding policy, and I'm working with parents about broadcasting the service without therefore broadcasting the identity of children that attend Spirit School. So you may even be able to see the next Spirit School on SPTV UK. And folks, is that something you want to see on SPTV? If it is, make sure you are liking and following and subscribing. Make sure that if you're on Facebook, you're involving yourself in the SPTV fan page, that you're giving us this type of feedback. And very simply, on YouTube and Facebook tonight, let me and producer know that that's the type of thing you'd like to see on a Sunday morning, and we will make it happen. We have that power. It is within our gift. Great question, Stacey. The card I've drawn for you is Libido. Okay, you've got the peacock. Beautiful peacock, doing what peacocks do very well, strutting their stuff, strutting their beautiful feathers. Opposite them is another peacock that said, hang on, mate, haven't you seen that snake in the grass? I don't think this is the right time to be showing off. And the peacock is like, with confidence, with confidence. Don't worry about the snake in the grass. Let them be. In the background is this beautiful waterfall. And this waterfall for me, Stacey, I want to talk about the concept of something that needs to be started with a clear finish line and some clear things that need to be done. Thinking about like the waterfall concept of a project. And for those of you involved in project work, you understand sort of Prince 2 and waterfall, boom, 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 boom. I want to say, Stacey, that something has started. It's got a clear finish time. We need to understand what it is that's going to be delivered. What is our scope, our limit of exploitation? And we need to get your mojo back, Stacey. We need to re-excite you and remember why you started in order to get you there and get it over the line so that you're delivering on time and on budget. Let's get your mojo back. And I want to say, Stacey, spicy. Now, I'm seeing a curry, chicken curry. Maybe you're a lover of chicken curry, but the word I kept hearing was spice. And it's Stacey, I was like, I want you to spice things up. So take that in a way that means something to you. But yeah, good luck and best wishes, Stacey. Thanks for that. Good question. Okay, spicy Stace, good night to you. Folks, stand by while we give you some adverts, let you know about some of the other fantastic things happening on SPTV UK. We'll be right back.
My Spirit Life is a free online interactive magazine for those who have an interest in improving their spiritual lives. Authors can upload images, videos, and audio clips to their own articles. The public can place comments, rate the article, and follow the author. All articles are vetted before being published. For more information and to place your own article, please visit myspiritlife.co.uk.
MySpiritualDirectory.com is one of the fastest growing online free listing service. Our search directory offers geolocation feature, rating ability, review system, map location, customer comment, YouTube video, gallery, social media sharing, direct contact with the lister, simple online booking and payment system. It's free to register and use. It even creates your own mini web page, which you can update at any time, and yes, it's still free, no monthly or yearly fees. 100% free. Creates your own profile page. Add social media and other links. Add a mini gallery and a YouTube video. Rating, reviews and comments. Includes online booking and payments. So, if you're looking for a medium or a reader, even a church, maybe a healer, or any other spiritual service, then visit myspiritualdirectory.com.
Hello, folks. Welcome back. And I think you've hopefully seen some of the amazing things happening in SPTV UK. If you head over to the website, you'll also see that the schedule of doing things. And the lovely Gemma Butler is the medium tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Do check her out. And Sunday morning service at Women and Spiritualist Church this weekend won't be broadcast on SPTV, but it should be broadcast on Women and Spirits. Okay. Ooh. So producers just said to me that actually he is available this Sunday, and we had a medium sadly let us down. So me and my dad are actually teaming up for a rare father and son duo of mediumship at Women of Spiritualist Church. So producer Richard has just said that we think we're going to broadcast that after all. So 11 a.m. Sunday morning. You get to see my dad and I working together. And over the last 40 years, I've only had a handful of opportunities to do it. So I'm really excited and looking forward to that. And I'll see some of you Sunday morning. Otherwise, folks, we're going to come back to your questions and some messages. Louise Amanda says, my daughter was 2. She passed away at this moment of sudden, unexpected infant death. Something that has weighed on my mind so much is how her transition would have been and that she arrived with her past loved one safely. Louise, thank you for sharing such a personal thing with us. And I'm so sorry that has happened. I can't begin to imagine what you're going through, and certainly when I've asked sort of spirit world about that, it's why I personally struggle with the concept of destiny. I don't believe that everything can be destined, because as a human being I can't understand why anyone would choose that. What I do believe, Louise, is that she would have chose you, and she would have chose your family, and that she had that opportunity to incarnate, and she had the intention of doing that, and she had the intention of living and experiencing things. Our physical body, our shell, appears indestructible sometimes, but it's also incredibly fragile. You need a miracle every day of pregnancy to take place just for everything to continue to develop. And sometimes the pregnancy goes well. And very sadly and tragically, with sudden sort of infant deaths, and they still don't understand why this happens. It just does. And I always think about the fact, it's like a brand new car off the showroom. That's not meant to happen. They're meant to have 100,000 miles in them, and they're not meant to do that. And our body is not designed to let ourselves down like that. And I believe that, sorry, 1 second. Do apologize, folks, for coughing down the mic. And it's very, very challenging. And you've asked what the transition is like, and you're always on your mind that she got there happily and safely. So yeah, I absolutely believe that they do. And there are in the spirit realm, there are spirit nurseries and creches, schools, and without a doubt, when that happened, spirit world would have been there for her, continuing to help her develop. And as soon as she has the sort of consciousness to understand what's happened, she'll have the opportunity to continue to develop. She might be able to choose to follow the earth clock and grow up in the spirit world at the same rate that she would have done in accordance with our time. She might stay as the age that she was, but her mind will continue to develop in the spirit world, because obviously she has no physical body now, and she therefore doesn't have any of those imperfections that physical body had as her vessel. So she would have transitioned. She would have been met there by loved ones. She would have been greeted, and she would be looked after and brought up within those nurseries. I often think about these almost like orphanages within the spirit world for children that suddenly find themselves there. Okay, thank you. Right, now I've just drawn a card for you, Louise. And it's about home. Okay, and I'm trying to bring a communicator through to you. I don't have anyone claiming to be your little girl, but I do have a woman claiming to know you. This woman's claiming to be grandmother. She's talking about being a great grandmother, and she's talking about having a little child with her. 5. Okay, so I don't know if you'd understand the reference to 5. Look, you will understand the reference to 5, because they're telling me, and 5 is either it's time, significant in terms of the time in the transition from the earthly experience to the spirit world. I want to talk about August and summer birthday that we're still celebrating. That this August birthday is very important. I want to talk about siblings, Louise, that she has left with an earthly experience, that you would understand that. And I've got a masculine energy there. I've got a little boy that she would describe as a brother. So the woman that claims to know you, talking about being mother, grandmother. Okay, I don't know if it was Shirley. She was also trying to tell me shh, but I was hearing that Shirley noise name again. I've also got the rose bush that's been planted in memory of a name, saying that we absolutely got her. Her hands were out there for her, and that this wasn't okay. Thank you. So that's in line with bone philosophy. This wasn't predestined. Something's gone wrong with the body, and she's suddenly found herself back, but she's back home. And she's safe. We've got her, and she's continuing to develop. And I feel like it's an older brother or someone that she would have survived. She's talking about now a little boy that she is describing as family. Okay, right. Thank you. Right, the communicator. I believe, Louise, that you understand is allowing the presence of the personality of someone claiming to be your daughter. Okay, but she's not talking directly to me. She's doing it through. I don't know if this would be a great grandmother, your grandmother in the spirit world, on Dad's side of the family, Louise. That they're okay. I'm okay. They got me, and I've got these hands out. This lady that's talking about great grandmother. I've got her in my hands. We continue to grow, and the 5 significant. I don't know if that's now an age that they have hit, or an age of a period of time, an earthly sort of period of time that they have then gone to. You'd understand that August. You also understand the numbers 2 and 7. I don't know if I'm putting 7 together to make the 9. I feel like the 2 and 7 appear almost on the wall like a door, and there's this brown door inwards opening, hinges on the left hand side with like yellow metal sort of brassy goldy sort of color letterbox, and the numbers 2 and 7 on that, that being quite important. I've also got links to the coast, and I can see the south on the compass. And so Louise, hopefully that is all evidence in your life right now which would lead you to believe that you've got a spirit communicator saying they've got someone that is claimed to be your daughter. She is okay. We've got her, and we're looking after. Louise, you don't have to give me any verification. I believe that will all make sense to you. Thank you. Beautiful question. Thank you for sharing. They've got her. She's fine. She's safe. Okay, I'm going to take. Okay. Okay. Going to bring up this question. Okay. Give me a moment, folks. Yep. Okay. Okay, folks, sorry for the quiet there. I was just getting some background context. So Diana is that Fanazia, good evening to you. And Richard was just explaining that he'd been corresponding with you in the chat bar as well. So I know that you're desperate to hear from someone in the spirit world, your daughter, and I just drew a card for you, Diana. So usually on this show we're looking for people to ask sort of spiritual questions, and then I sort of draw a card for you. This card, Diana, for you is person at the top of the field there, ploughing the farm, the fields, hard at work. And I want to talk about wealth. I want to talk about value. I want to talk about unmeasured treasures. And I have a man in the spirit world. Okay, so it's not someone claiming to be a daughter, but I have a man in the spirit world. He was a father. I'm an in-law of some sort, because he keeps taking my wedding ring finger off. Okay, you're done. Oh, okay. I don't know if you've also got a ring of a male relative. You do have a ring, Diana, of a male relative in the spirit world. This man has passed with heart failure, heart attack. Boom, boom, done. He's like, I don't know if something's happened twice, and then this was the third time, like a third strike. Sudden, aggressive. He's talking about the heart failure. Diana, he's saying about the money. He's like, stop throwing your money away, Diana. Look after it, invest in it, and invest in you. You know that she's fine. Okay. Okay, thank you. D, I've got Danny, Debbie. There's the letter D was really important. I know you're Diana. Okay, it's for you. Right. He's communicating directly with you. He's talking to you, Diana. He's you, Diana. I want to call you like DD, Diana. I don't know why the DD, that the double D is quite significant. Okay, the smell. Okay. Your daughter is absolutely fine. Your daughter is absolutely fine. Perfume. Your perfume, you smelt your perfume. She sprayed your perfume in your bedroom, not when you had used it. This perfume hadn't been used. You found the cap off the perfume had been sprayed. He's talking about that. He's claiming your daughter's taking responsibility for doing that, and that you've been talking to the birds. Okay, I always talk to the robins in my garden, but this bird was like a black bird with like an orange yellow beak, and you're asking them for a sign, and it was like they flew almost in like an L shape, sort of went down and to the side. I've got this letter L, and the L is important as well. L for Lima, Lucy, Lulu, la 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 la. That was the sound that I was hearing within my mind's eye, Diana. So the man that was communicating, hopefully understand the family relationship with the heart, and he's talking about the fact that your daughter is fine, and serenity. Okay, said okay, with permission, Diana, we'll all send you some love and light. He's talking about the pain that you're feeling, and that you need to continue to go through that, work through that pain. You're hung up on pain. Keep working through it one day at a time, one step at a time, Diana. Know that he's sending you love and light. This spiritual healing from the spirit world, from him and others around you. Okay, thank you. Talking about the fact your daughter was also grateful for the fresh flowers on Thursday. There's fresh flowers on Thursday, and what looks like some sort of, I don't know if it's a capstone or memorial stone of some sort, Diana, that you would also understand. Okay, that was all I had for you, Diana. And as I say, he was saying keep hold of your money, invest in you, Diana, one step at a time, one day at a time. You're much braver than you think. You've got this, Diana. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense to you. And I say, for those of you who have got messages, if you're able to verify and give us confirmation that all made sense, that's very much appreciated, folks. Lily Rose, do spiritualists believe in ETs, and do they connect with them? There was actually an article I read this week about one of the TV mediums. I can't remember who it was now. Might have been Tony Stockwell, someone like that. And they were talking about it. So I don't think you can say that spiritualists, as in all of us, believe in ETs. Do I believe in other intelligence on other planets in the infinitely expanding universe? Yes, I do. Am I able to communicate with them as a spiritualist? Not directly. Are there people within the spiritualist movement that claim they can? Absolutely. Are there people within the spiritualist movement that talk about previous incarnations as other beings on other worlds? And in theory, if we're talking about God being the word we use to describe the sum total of all the particles of all the intelligence energy in the universe, which is continuing to expand, then everyone with an intelligence and a personality that has a life after life will exist within that realm. Some people believe that therefore the mind's eye is able to attune not just to life in heaven, but life on other planets. There was a fantastic show, Origin of the Ancients, with Kate and Birgitta. You'll be able to watch some of that on YouTube and the archives on the sptv.uk website, Lily, where they used to talk about their beliefs in life on other planets, life as we know it now, about us being star seeds, life on this planet starting from other planets. And there is a couple of psychic experiments going on at the moment where people within spiritualism are trying to make sort of almost like spiritual contact with other beings, extraterrestrials, as in not from this planet. So yeah, I certainly have a belief in life on other planets. I'm not in direct communication. I have a massive interest in it. I'm a huge sci-fi geek. Anything with the word star in front of it, Star Trek, Stargate, Star Wars, I've loved all of that stuff. And often when I'm watching it, I don't see it as the same sort of fantasy that my wife would when she watches it and thinks it's all sort of made up and made believe, because she's very much focused on the life we're living now. And most spiritual people talk about that's the most important thing. We focus on what, are 2 feet in front of us and going forwards and doing what we do. But for me, I do have that belief, and I also love shows like Ancient Aliens. I mean, some of it is a bit wacky even for me. When it's in the History Channel, gets a little bit high at night time, and it starts talking about us and ancient aliens. And I think that this planet's experience is much older than our sort of Christian traditions will tell it is, and that life right back to life around the coming out of the Ice Age. Before that, 11, 12,000 years ago, ancient monoliths we still don't have proper understanding and lost sort of bits of history. Is it possible that our ancestors were much more intelligent than we gave them to credit for as hunter and gatherers? I think that's absolutely possible too. Is it possible they had help from other people on other planets, or they came from other planets? I think that's also possible. Love the stories of Atlantis and the Lemurians and people like that. So yeah, all sorts of incredible stuff. And I think you'll find that within spiritualism, unidentified flying objects, or is it it's got another word now, I've forgotten, aerial phenomena, isn't it? Aerial phenomena. You do find lots of people, because if your mind is open, then you find yourself open to all sorts of people. And one of my favourite investigators is a guy called Malcolm Robinson. He's been interviewed a few times on this show. Strange Phenomena Investigations, when he set out in the 1970s to almost disprove spiritualism, ended up finding so much evidence there was a life after death. I think he would call himself a spiritualist now, and I think indeed he does. But he also investigates unidentified flying objects and aerial phenomenon. He's written some fantastic books on it, and he talks about conspiracy theories, the Loch Ness monster, other interdimensional sort of beings. And I think when your mind is open, and you realize the infinite intelligence of energy, then yeah, absolutely possible. So great question, Lily. Thanks for getting us on that. I give you some sage. Usually we give you some sage to get rid of any toxic people or elements from your life. But look at this old wise monk in the halls of knowledge, Lily. And I give you some sage in order for you to dedicate some time to explore the halls of learning. I believe that your mind is running wild, particularly at bedtime. You're waking up feeling even more tired, and that your mind is running wild as you go for that. And this element of sage is just for you to block something out which is more toxic in your life than this knowledge is. And you're making space for this knowledge, Lily. So keep doing what you're doing. Okay, last couple of questions and readings now, folks, coming up. Also love the X-Files. I mean, I even collected all the X-Files videos. And for anyone under 30, probably don't know what a VHS tape is. Still got them up in the loft and a VHS player to watch them when I retire again. Yeah, coughing a lot here. The old pollen's getting me good time. I've got the door open because it's warm. And I'm struggling. Okay. Julie says, why do evil people live and good people die? I don't get it. It makes me so angry and upset. I mean, the absolute natural things to feel, Julie. I also feel them. Evil people live, so do good people. But evil people die. And everyone earthly experience do die. I talk about good people dying early and evil people perhaps living later. I watched a horrific documentary the other day. The butcher in the morgue or something, I caught the end of it. It was a horrific story about someone that continued to offend right up until an old age pensioner. And recent DNA caught them out, and they ended up being a serial killer and all sort of horrific abuse. You think, why did that person get to live that life and have all of that negative sort of impact? Now, wise old souls like Ralph Steadman was a fantastic guide to me in the earthly life, and now guides me from the spirit world. I've got him whispering in my ear saying, it's all part of the experience. It all has a reason. You're not necessarily going to comprehend that now, Ash, but you will, in the spirit world, understand that everything that happens does happen for a reason, and that all of that experience was meant to be, and that you'll eventually get that, but not necessarily in this life. I think that therefore the feelings we feel now about angry and fear or upset are absolutely natural, Julie. I struggle as a human being to understand why that would be predestined, that people would choose to live an evil, negative life, get the opportunity to do so, and then live, a number of years in order to do that. I don't get it. I used to talk to people like Ralph Steadman about this when he was alive, and he would say, but, imagine if it was then used as research. Imagine if, someone that was an abuser comes back and then is abused, and actually then comes back and they're a psychologist, and then comes back again and becomes a doctor, and then comes back and writes a book, and then comes back and creates safeguarding strategy, and then comes back and creates a training course, and then comes back and creates an app. And that actually all of this experience makes up for the next experience. It's all part of some sort of research. And for the bad and evil things that happen in this world, there's an opportunity for good to triumph. The spirit world used to talk about the evil behind the Nazi party and the Nazi sort of isms, as well as the evil of individuals like Hitler, and that all that evil needed to triumph was for good people to do nothing. And actually, millions of people were transitioned to the spirit world much earlier than you think that would have been natural. And while we talk about living a good life and not taking life, the spirit world and people like Zodiac and others used to talk during that Second World era about the fact that it was necessary for good people to defeat evil. And that actually, well, it wasn't, Spirit World said it's good that you've taken life. They were talking about combating the evil and the criminality behind evil. So I think all of the experiences are useful in the end. When you look back with the benefit of hindsight, you'll see it. I'm struggling with the death of my godson, who decided to take his own life at a moment. I'm like, he was such a good kid and he had such a beautiful personality and foundation. He became dependent on drugs and alcohol and a few other things, and tormented towards the end of his life. And I'm angry that I couldn't get him the help he needed. I'm angry because I think that suicide is absolutely preventable, and I couldn't prevent his death when he made that decision to do it. And I say that as a spiritual person, as a spiritualist, as a celebrant, as a counselor, as someone that's just completed mental health first aid training as well. And I think all of these things we're meant to feel now, and all of those things are important. So, I'm sorry it makes you angry and upset. I think that in itself is really important, Julie, that we enable ourselves to feel everything. We try and take the experience from it. It's part of our foundation, and we use that foundation to build superstructures. Richard's just going to tell me a story while I draw you the card on the tower. It's okay. I'm just going to give this tower, and then Joanne Lewis, we're going to talk about, I think, UFO. So here's you in the tower, Julie, and I want to surround you in this tower. And we're talking about foundations, weren't we? Look at you. You're there at the top of the hill fort, and on top of the hill fort, you've built a tower, and on top of the tower, you're in the turret, and the top of the turret. You've got the opportunity to see the big picture, and I feel that Spirit are helping you to continue to see the big picture. It's like I've got you on the spiritual helicopter now, Julie. We're going to continue to help you to see the big picture and help you to try and understand, but you're not meant to understand everything in this life. But there you are, and you are a fountain of knowledge in a well-protected fort. But like a fort, you're also a lighthouse, and people can see you at the top of the hill. Keep shining the light. The light will ward off evil and will let the good come home. Okay, Julie, so that card was for you. And then I'll take the next question. So we were just talking about UFOs. Joanne Lewis, what's your thoughts on... Oh, sorry, I'll answer that one anyway. So what's your thoughts on the healing sanctuary in heaven? And what are your thoughts on incarnation or another planet in the solar system? So Joanne Lewis, yeah, absolutely. I think that it's possible. You can incarnate as a human being. You can have the end of that life, find yourself in the spirit world, and you could then incarnate on another planet. There are spiritualist philosophers, guides who talk about living lives in other planets, in other lives as other types of beings, and there are some fantastic books about it. And I often think about some of the ancient scripts. The Book of Enoch, the great grandfather of Noah, talks about coming out of seeing the planet, seeing planet Earth as a sphere, and then being given all this sort of knowledge. The Ethiopians have an entire sort of church and faith dedicated to that. So yeah, I think it's absolutely possible. I don't think it's routine. I think most human beings reincarnate again as another human being. But I think in order to get to human beings, you have a level of progression. Ralph Steadman used to talk about that. In order to create the energy to be a being and then incarnate as a human being, you might have started off as a bit of energy from a mineral. And then the minerals come together to become a bigger mineral. And then a bigger mineral becomes something bigger, and something bigger, and something bigger. And the energy keeps joining and experiencing itself, experiencing the world. And Joanne, you had another question there. I was just answering about a sanctuary. Mr. Producer can take me back to that one. I'll answer that at the same time. And then I'm going to draw a card for you. What's your thoughts on a healing sanctuary in heaven where all the physical attributes are removed and lessons integrating the soul's journey and growth of the soul can be identified? Yeah, lovely. Absolutely do agree with that, Joan Lewis. I think that one of the first things we do when we can do is we recreate a physical body in the spirit world. So it's not a physical body, but we recreate a spirit body similar to the physical body. We can do it without any of the imperfections and the aches and pains. We can do it to a younger age. We can add more hair, take away tattoos, add tattoos, jewelry, clothes. All of that's absolutely possible. And I think that there is lots of places we go to for healing, both psychological healing, physical healing. We can go and sign up for lectures, workshops, training courses. We can continue our education. We can continue our experiences. And in the heaven spirit world, anything we want, all we need to do is think it, boom, it happens immediately. But if you want to influence this 3D world from the fourth or fifth dimension, much, much harder. But in the spirit world, all you need to do is simply think it and it can be there, and it can take courses. My guide team, and I talk about a few of them, all at different levels, all entered heaven most recently at different times, and all have progressed at different speeds. I talk an awful lot about running bear, Native American Indian from 1700, last incarnated on Earth, actually progressing much faster than Sai. Sai is an ancient and more ancient character, lived anywhere between 4,000 and 10,000 years ago as a sort of last earthly experience, and has progressed much slower in the spirit world because he's not wanted to. It's taken him a long time to do so. And then Ralph Steadman, who entered only a couple of years ago again, but had possibly had tens of thousands of lives before that. So it's all about these different journeys and growth. All of that absolutely possible. And that if you want, you imagine this glass of water. The glass is maybe another type of vessel that contains the energy. And every now and then, a little bit it gets dropped out. There we go. There's a human being incarnating right now. Same vessel, same glass. I'm going to drop a little bit over there. A little bit over there. And therefore, if the glass was part of something bigger, maybe the glass is God in the universe, that we're all experiencing different things at the same time. Maybe it's our higher self, and that we can have multiple incarnations in different realms, in different dimensions at different times. So I think all of it's possible. I think as you start getting into metaphysics, I probably lack the intelligence, or certainly the education in this life to fully understand it. And I think most of us don't, which is why I often talk in plain English. But you say, wow, great to know that I'm not the only one to think this. Thank you, Ashley. Joanne, you're very, very welcome. Drew, oh yeah, Drew, did I give the tower card to Joanne? I've forgotten now. It's definitely getting to that point in the night. It's at 9:30 now, folks. So I'm going to finish there. I've had a wonderful opportunity tonight, and I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful to Spiritual Psychics TV. I'm grateful to you, my live congregation, my live audience across the world, continents of Africa, America, and Canada, different countries today. I think it was Australia. Absolutely amazing. You are all beautiful, amazing people. Thank you so much for being here. If it's 9th of June and you just heard that, thanks for being here live. If you're watching this on playback next week, thanks for doing that too. Thanks for watching it on playback. Okay, I didn't give you a card. Right, card for you then is the Union, Joanne. And as we finish on this card for you, we've got the two streams joining in unity to create a more powerful river there. We've also got that chalice. And I want to say, you chose wisely. Also Indiana Jones and the gospel. I want to talk about relationship, Joanne. I want to talk about you and another person working together, single team ethos, greater good. I want to talk about moral courage. I want to talk about the fact that you are choosing and making decisions together, and that you chose wisely, and that you are stronger together, Joanne. I also want to give you an anniversary in February. An odd one, 29th. You'd understand that leap year, February the 29th. And I want to talk about a proposal, a lady proposing to a man, that leap year being really integral part of that. They're calling it a reverse proposal. You'd understand that within your friends and family network. Your communicator is someone that's claiming that to be a friend of yours, Joanne. And they're giving the letter T, and then they're calling themselves Tinkerbell or Tilly. Certainly a lady that's passed with a cancerous type condition. I want to call her Teeny or Tinky, Teeny, T. Letter T would be important. Joanne, that was for you. And to all of you folks, good night and God bless. Thank you so much.